Welcome to the Reparations Are on the Ballot Town Hall, hosted by the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America and the National Black Cultural Information Trust. I'm Jessica Ann Mitchell-Iwuyor, founder of NBCI Trust. As we get closer to the 2020 elections, several issues concerning Black life in America continue to emerge in national discussions. One of these critical topics is the issue of reparations. The longstanding movement for reparations due to the descendants of Africans that were enslaved in the United States is powerful, intricate, and layered. Many questions surround the history, strategies, legislation, and legal battles in the fight for reparations. Today, we're gathering to provide more clarity and insight to combat disinformation and/or confusion about the struggle for reparations in the United States. Now we'll hear from Kamm Howard, co-sponsor of this event and male national co-chair of NCOBRA.
So I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight and joining us in this webinar. The Reparations on the Ballot Town Hall tonight. I want to thank the National Black Cultural Information Trust for co-sponsoring this event with us. And I want to start off by just recognizing those of whom this fight is waged. I want to recognize those who gave and lost their lives on the trek from the interior of Africa to the shores, and those who endured that trek, those who gave and lost their lives during the Middle Passage, and those who endured the Middle Passage, those who gave and lost their lives through the period of enslavement, and those who endured the period of enslavement, those who gave and lost their lives during the first period of apartheid, Jim Crow segregation in this country, and those who endured the Jim Crow apartheid system. Those who gave and lost their lives during the post-Jim Crow period, and those who are many of us who are living today who are giving our lives and enduring this new era of apartheid. And finally, those who have yet to come, those who are to come, who also give their lives in this struggle to be redeemed in this country. Tonight, we're here to talk about reparations on the ballot. And I want to begin with a quote. This is a quote that's oftentimes shared in times like these. It's a quote that the Congressional Black Caucus took as a slogan upon their formation. And that quote is, "We have no permanent enemies, we have no permanent friends, only permanent interests." Today, we're here to discuss one of those permanent interests, the interests of reparations, the right and actions to be repaired for centuries of crimes against our humanity. We're here tonight at a most critical and crucial moment in the centuries-long reparations struggle. Currently, the federal redress bill, H.R. 40, has been revised from a study bill to a remedy bill. This is major. The bill will establish a commission that will send back to Congress a comprehensive reparations plan to address the continued injury from the crimes of the periods that I mentioned. There is a Senate companion bill, that's 1083, thus making this the first time since Reconstruction is there a possibility of both houses of Congress to debate the issue of redress for Black people. Unfortunately, reparations is a partisan issue. It has always been a partisan issue in this country. During Reconstruction, the Republican Party was a party that favored the idea of redress, and the Democrats were against it. Now, the Democrats are in favor of redress, and Republicans are totally against it. There are 162 co-sponsors to the House bill, H.R. 40. 162 are Democrat, there are no Republicans. There are 20 co-sponsors to S. 1083, the Senate bill, and 20 are Democrat, and none are Republican. This dichotomy shows us, in fact, that we have no permanent friends or no permanent enemies, only permanent interests. The fate of the federal legislation on the issue of reparations hinges on the outcome of this election. A Democratic House majority is a must. A Democratic Senate majority is a must. The Republican Senate leader, Mitch McConnell, said we've already gotten our reparations with an Obama presidency. The chair of the Judiciary Committee, Senator Lindsey Graham, says there will be no conversation on reparations as long as he's the chair of that committee. The Democrats must take the Senate. But let's say they fall short by one seat and it's a 50-50 split in the Senate. Then it is the vice president who breaks the tie Yes, reparations is on the ballot, and we must do all that we can to ensure that we meet our interests, that repair is also given in this election. So repair is definitely on the reparations is definitely on the ballot. And so with that, I want to open up the panel discussion and bring in our first panelist, and that is Attorney Adjoa Aiyetoro, who is a law professor emeritus of Arkansas State University, and a co-founder of NCOBRA. Attorney Aiyetoro.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kamm. As Kamm said, I'm a professor emerita. I claim the feminine version of that word of University of Arkansas, Little Rock, William H. Bowen School of Law, co-founder of NCOBRA, past co-chair and executive director of the National Conference of Black Lawyers. And I say that because National Conference of Black Lawyers was one of the 3 co-founding organizations of NCOBRA. So that's why that's important. I was asked by Kamm, maybe a month or 6 weeks ago, if I would take a rough draft of what he had done around reparations and encouraging people to vote to support reparations at HR 40, get people to support HR 40 and Senate Bill 1083. And so I took and drafted from his first draft what is called Reparations is on the Ballot, Don't Be Fooled. Most of you have that. I'm not going to read it to you, but I do want to kind of summarize why it's on the ballot. I think some people are saying don't vote because we don't have our reparations, or don't vote until we get our reparations. Well, those of you who are familiar with the reparations movement all over many, many years, and those of you who are not, we know that in this country, the United States, things get done, laws get passed, or remedies get dealt out based on either litigation, suing somebody and winning, or through executive order, or through the political process of legislation. Reparations is on the ballot, and you shouldn't be fooled to think you can sit out and just say, well, I'm not going to vote until we get our reparations, because all that does is continue the racism and white supremacist actions that have been heaped on us from, as Kamm pointed out, from the time we were stolen, our ancestors were stolen from Africa till today. So we have to be active. We can't sit back. We can't assume, and we can't be bought by the story that some people will want to tell you, is that we have to sit out until we get our rights. The other thing people were saying is, well, don't vote for the president, just vote down ballot. Well, we know also from research study of past elections that in fact, in an election year for president, most people are going to the polls to vote for president. We have very low turnout historically, much lower turnout, maybe not very low, but much lower turnout in years when there's no president on the ballot. So if we tell people don't vote for president, some people will just say, well, I'm not going to the poll. What we need to tell people is you go and you vote the whole ballot, from president down or from down up to president, whichever way you want to say it. Because we know from examples, and I'm sure other panelists will talk about some of the state actions, but we have very significant examples of local legislatures actually passing legislation for reparations. So we know all of the people who are running for office, whether it's state, local, or national, are very key. The last point I want to make is that we have made significant advances in getting to more and more co-sponsors of HR 40 and Senate Bill 1083. When John Conyers first introduced HR 40, which, as Kamm mentioned, has been modified or amended to make it not to take it out as a study bill for whether reparations are owed, and make it a study bill for what form reparations are owed. But the basic concrete process started with John Conyers. in 1989. And from 1989 to 2000 and I think it was 19 when Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee became the primary sponsor of the bill and reintroduced it in the session that began in 2019. We had probably somewhere maybe, up to 40, maybe at the very most 45. And I think that's a gift of 45 people who co-sponsored HR 40. Under the leadership since 2019, we have gotten up to 154, maybe more. When I wrote this, it was 154 people that are sponsoring it. And as Kamm said, we now have, for the first time, a Senate bill. So we are making progress, but we're making progress because people in Congress are supporting, and Kamm pointed out, they're Democrats, are supporting the passage of this bill. If we don't vote, if we stay at home, if we allow people to the old guard to stay in, because that's what happens many times if people don't vote, it's the incumbents that get in, then in fact, what we'll do is have the same thing over and over. We need to get out and cast our vote. Is there a guarantee? Absolutely not. No one can guarantee that when the new Congress with a new president will pass the bill. But we have pretty good evidence at the growing number of legislators who are signing on that are Democrat, that we have a fairly good shot at, in the next term of Congress, getting HR 40 and SB 1083 passed, if we can retain control of the House. And when I say we, I mean the Democrats. And if the Democrats can take over and get control of the Senate. So don't be fooled. That was the byline of the piece that we wrote. Don't be fooled. Don't let the rhetoric of, oh, don't vote until they give us reparations, convince you to stay away from the polls or convince you to only vote for certain people. That doesn't move the needle further for us to get reparations. There is no guarantee, only possibility and probability. Yet not voting at all gives us just what we have now, a continuation of the legacies of slavery that we all experience, the violence, the heinous crimes of violence in the streets, killing Black men and women and brown men and women, the continuing structural racism that keeps us by and large at the bottom of all indicia of well-being, and at the top of all indicia of oppression and restrictions. So don't be fooled. Thank you.
Thank you, Adjoa. Again, Adjoa is one of our co-founders of NCOBRA, and you can see why. Next two panelists will be Dr. Ron Daniels, who's the president of the Institute of the Black World, 21st Century, and the convener of the National African American Reparations Commission. Dr. Daniels, you can say a little bit about yourself, what you're doing, and how people can reach you before you begin.
Well, Kamm, first of all, thanks so much for this opportunity. The National African American Reparations Commission can be reached by way of the website ibw21.org, and hopefully as we proceed, we'll have an opportunity to share the information even more. I want to commend the National NCOBRA and the National Black Cultural Information Trust for convening this very important forum on reparations is on the ballot. I just have to say that. This is an incredibly powerful and significant event. Also, just want to give a shout out to Queen Mother Mashariki Jawanza, the co-chair, longtime friend, and I am a lifetime member of NCOBRA, not a founder, but a lifetime member, and have supported NCOBRA over the years. I want to say that reparations matters, but this election matters, period. And so I know a lot of people are sitting on the sidelines, hemming and hawing, trying to figure out what they should do. But white supremacy is also on the ballot. And so when we look at it from that perspective, just imagine Agent Orange, who trashed the Central Park Five, right? Y'all recall that? recall that it was Agent Orange who propagated and pushed the theory of birtherism, denigrating President Barack Hussein Obama. So John Henry Clark warned us that white supremacy was something we'd have to face. Ronald Walters, who was a strong supporter of NCOBRA, strong supporter, one of our leading academicians, the leading political science of his time, wrote a whole book on white nationalism. And so white nationalism is on the ballot. When we look at what's happening in terms of COVID, the response of this administration to the COVID crisis, who does that impact? Black and brown people primarily. They act like it's not a big deal because it affects us. That's white supremacy. That's institutional structural racism. That's on the ballot as well. And so we have to put all this into context in terms of voting or not voting. To not vote in this election could be fatal to Black aspirations, fatal. People could die because we decided not to vote. And I'm not saying that I'm exhorting, I'm not castigating. I'm just saying this is incredibly powerfully, incredibly important. Back to the theme of white nationalism, imagine President Obama having a white nationalist in the White House as a senior policy advisor, in the person of Steve Bannon. And you still have Stephen Miller there right now. This is white nationalism in the White House. Now, that's important in terms of reparations because Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, among other things, has said that H.R. 40, that reparations is the one umbrella issue that cuts to the very heart of structural institutional racism. And that is manifest in H.R. 40. And it's already been said eloquently and powerfully by Sister Adjoa Aiyetoro, and others will say likewise, we have never, ever advanced this far. And I really have to give a shout out to that awesome Kenniss Henry, because she has been pounding and pushing with the NCOBRA legislative commission. She is just awesome. And NCOBRA has been leading the charge to get us to that 162 sponsors, along with others who are part of a massive coalition who are getting that work done. And so, yes, reparations is on the ballot. And in order to achieve what we need to achieve, that means we need to march on ballot boxes to ensure that the House of Representatives stays in the hands of the Democrats. Not because we love the Democrats or dislike the Democrats. This is the medium. This is the vehicle by which we're moving this forward. And similarly in the Senate, we need to capture the Senate. And then on to the presidency, because really Black votes, Black power, Black political voter power will be the margin of difference in this election. And so we need all three. As Kamm has laid out so eloquently and powerfully at the beginning of this, we need all three. Because imagine when you have a Democrat in the White House, the Senate with a majority of Democrats, as well as the House of Representatives, H.R. 40 is actually going to pass and be enacted into law. The struggle won't be over then, because we'll have to still fight and struggle and keep the movement alive to make sure that it does what it should do. It'll really just be the beginning. But Reparations Ray Jenkins, who inspired and encouraged Congressman John Conyers to move forward, he'll be jumping up and down and happy from the ancestral realm, because we will have done what we need to do. So the watchword is simple: march on ballot boxes. March on ballot boxes. Reparations is on the ballot, and we intend to win. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Daniels, for a powerful exhortation to our people to get out and vote. And as you stated, white supremacy is on the ballot for sure. I want to bring it up, and you mentioned this, Sister, in your remarks. I want to bring up our Legislative Commission Chair and NCOBRA's Legislative Commission Chair, Sister Kenniss Henry.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. And Dr. Daniels, you're just much too kind. Thank you so very much. My job is to bring about the bragging of what all NCOBRA has done. However, those who've gone before me have made it so easy that it's almost difficult for me to talk about what it is that we have done. However, I would like to point out that NCOBRA is a premier grassroots movement coalition. And because we've been in this fight for so long, we have amassed a lot of experience. And we realize that we do have all of this experience. So we are beginning to document that experience. And to that end, we actually have been very involved in local reparations at the local level. And we were very successful in facilitating and supporting the passage of the Chicago Subcommittee on Reparations, as well as we've been involved in providing ongoing support of another local reparations effort, and that's Evanston's Reparations Subcommittee also. And because there are so many efforts now for local government and local reparation efforts, we've actually crafted a document, a pamphlet, laying the foundation for local reparations. And it is an awesome document because we are providing you with our lessons learned. We are helping you to be able to kind of not make the, I don't want to say mistakes, but just to be able to avoid the bumps in the road, as you said about your efforts with local reparations. In addition to that, we actually have a major commitment to our youth. So we have been very, very involved in developing our youth groups, and we have a youth commission. So for the first time, the Legislative Commission decided to do a Twitter storm, and we looked to our youth who are all about social media, and they were ecstatic that we were doing that. They took it, they ran with it, and we did it on the 25th anniversary of the Million Man March to commemorate that historical day and time. And our youth did the Twitter storm that Friday. They were so enthusiastic about it that they kept it up the entire weekend. Other efforts with our youth coalitions, we have a youth coalition in DC, and we have done a lot of work with them. A couple of the things we've done, we've gone out into the community with our youth activist group from DC, and we were out educating people on reparations. And while we were out there, we actually registered folk to vote. We had laptops with us, and we had them sign petitions in support of HR 40 and reparations. And we also used it as a day to feed those folk who came up. So on one of the days we were out, we actually passed out 500 meals. One of the youth groups wanted to do a reparations mural. So we pulled our funds, and we found an awesome street artist who did a mural. It's in Hyattsville, Maryland, in the Arts District, if you're ever there. It's been completed about 2 months, and we actually have been featured in the local news media, an awesome write-up about the reparations mural. It is not on the website yet, but we'll look to post it on the website. Again, because of the plethora of information that we have amongst us, not just on the Legislative Commission, but throughout the organization, we actually have crafted a document. It is the HR 40/S1083 primer. And it's really a very informative document. It actually talks about the the forms that reparations can assume. It goes into some detail as to why we opted to revise the HR 40 bill, and it speaks to the actual text of HR 40. It is posted on our website, ncobraonline.org. We definitely invite you to go to the website, read the primer. Feel free to share it with your friends, your inner circle, because it does go far to make you aware of what we're talking about when we talk about reparations. And we continue to be involved in fighting the inaccuracies about reparations and HR 40. On the website, you'll also find a document entitled Revise HR 40 ? Because there are those naysayers and the negative forces who are advocating that we revise HR 40. So our document is entitled Revise HR 40 ? Absolutely not. We're saying pass HR 40. So the document title is Revise HR 40 ? Pass HR 40 instead. And I just have to say it again. You've all said it, but it needs to be repeated again. Not just the Legislative Commission. There are so many other groups and coalitions who have come together, and we are so happy that we can come to you and say we have 162 co-sponsors, and as Adjoa said, 45 is a gift. We actually have the highest number being 48 co-sponsors at any time in the past. So our goal is to keep pushing forward. Our goal is to eventually, hopefully this year, not sure, but to bring back to you an opportunity to see us have a markup of HR 40 and hopefully take it to the floor for debate. If not, next year, we are pushing in that direction. And it is a lot of work. And it's not just that you pick up the phone and call an elected official. On the Legislative Commission, we study who our vulnerable elected officials are. We pull up the data, and we have scripts that we've written. We have an awesome interactive map on the website. It actually has contact information for our elected officials. It's user-friendly. We have a tutorial on the website with it, and we have FAQs, frequently asked questions, and we invite you to help us out, make phone calls, send emails, use the map, go on the website, find the map, identify who your elected officials are who have not come on board as co-sponsors. And one other thing that we would like to ask of you is, if your elected officials are co-sponsors, it's a really, really good touch if you pick up the phone or you drop them an email and just say thank you for coming on board as a co-sponsor. The Legislative Commission does have a letter, and anytime anyone comes on board as a co-sponsor in the past before COVID-19, I actually went on Capitol Hill and personally delivered the letters. A little bit more difficult now, so we just still send them, but we send them by email or snail mail. Again, thank you so much for this opportunity, and have a good evening.
Thank you, Kenniss, for all the work that you do in leading the NCOBRA's Legislative Commission in these efforts. Greatly appreciate it. And the work that we've done, the numbers that we have is indicative of the hard work and your leadership within NCOBRA. You mentioned some of the other players and Dr. Daniels did, as well as a group of us who are coordinating a effort to pass HR 40 and get the number of co-sponsors. And our next speaker, Dreisen Heath, who's a researcher with Human Rights Watch. She's one of those, Human Rights Watch is one of those partners. And Dreisen has done a lot of work on HR 40 in this coordinated effort. And Dreisen Heath, if you can, come on and share with us your thoughts and human rights thoughts on reparations being on the ballot.
Thank you so much, Kamm, and great to be with you all and a part of this esteemed panel of revolutionaries and transformative leaders. Like Kamm said, my name is Dreisen Heath, a member of the US program at Human Rights Watch, which is an international nonpartisan rights organization documenting abuses in over 90 countries and advocating for lasting change. My primary focus is the all-encompassing field that is racial justice in the US. So as our panel has explained already, we are currently in unprecedented times. Today's social and economic conditions really remind us that we cannot deny the devastating and just spiraling impacts of the legacy of slavery. Inequality is worsening. Black people in the US, both disproportionately infected and killed by the COVID-19 virus, will struggle to recover economically, if at all, from the impacts of the virus. The ongoing protests against racial injustice and structural systemic violence helped ignite a fire to the movement to defend Black lives. And people, as Fannie Lou Hamer once said, you know, people are sick and tired and tired of being sick and tired, and folks are willing to confront problems today head on with comprehensive solutions. And so HR 40 is really the moment that we're in, is the answer to the moment that we're in, and is a reasonable and logical step towards real equality, something we have never witnessed since this country's inception. The powerful leading reparations advocacy groups like COBRA and NAARC forces with other national and international organizations like Human Rights Watch, the ACLU, Center for American Progress, the NAACP, Color of Change, and others to get HR 40 passed. Just a little history on Human Rights Watch. Human Rights Watch, we entered the reparations conversation over 20 years ago, before the Durban conference in South Africa, where we advocated for reparations for the legacies of colonialism and slavery. Fast forward to today, we're supporting the local reparations movement in Tulsa, demanding immediate compensation for the few living survivors, all aged over 100 years, and descendants of the 1921 race massacre. And also committed to supporting our local partners in designing and implementing a comprehensive reparations plan for the pervasive inequality generations of Black Tulsans still face today, stemming directly from the massacre. Our report, The Case for Reparations in Tulsa, Oklahoma, a Human Rights Argument, was cited in the recent Tulsa reparations lawsuit filed this past September. We formally supported HR 40 ahead of the Juneteenth hearing in 2019. So HR 40, you know, as my panelists have already mentioned, first carried by Congresswoman Conyers, now in the hands of Congresswoman Jackson Lee, has floated around for 31 years in the legislative chambers. And it would be absolutely historic if the bill passed out of House Judiciary Committee and passed out of the House this congressional session. And that's what we've been devoted and dedicated to doing this session. Not only will HR 40 investigate the institution of slavery, but the ongoing structural violence and degradation against Black bodies. That pervasive discrimination, from racial terror lynchings to Black codes and segregation, mass incarceration, the war on drugs, but also the continued conditions of inequality. So together we've garnered a record-setting 162 co-sponsors and counting in the House, 20 in the Senate. We've had a savvy, creative, persuasive, and bullish approach, really, to sway public and congressional support towards reparations. In August, we launched a Why We Can't Wait project, honoring the words and vision of Dr. Martin Luther King, urging that the country move courageously towards repair immediately, because we cannot wait for reparations. We can't wait because the suicide rate for Black children is rising faster than any other racial group. The wealth gap between Black and white wealth is as large as it was in 1968. Black infants are more than twice as likely to die as white infants. And that disparity is worse than it was when Black people were enslaved in 1850. And the funding gaps between schools that serve Black students versus white students. And unfortunately, the list goes on and on. So we also have an accompanying forthcoming video series to go along with the Why We Can't Wait project that now has over 200 signatories that is representative of racial justice organizations, churches, businesses across the US, from national groups to grassroots groups. That video series will feature directly impacted people and descendants of enslaved people, white people in the US, influencers and victims of other atrocities in the US and abroad who support reparations and a full repair process for Black people. We have a petition on the Color of Change's Organize For platform urging an immediate vote on HR 40 that you can sign and share. Human Rights Watch continues to mobilize our supporter base to reach out directly to congressional members. As Kenniss mentioned, NCOBRA has an incredible interactive HR 40 map that helps you determine which congressional leaders still need to get on board. The ACLU and Human Rights Watch both have HR 40 campaign pages on their website. Our Reparations Now campaign page, you can just put in your information and send an email directly to your local representatives to urge them to urge congressional leadership to bring an immediate vote to HR 40. Between all of us, we have a library of resources for reparatory justice, what it means, what forms it can take, how it can be implemented. We've been working with various news outlets like Now This, LA Times, The Nation, and others to continue to sway public opinion and educate people on the need for and definition of reparations. Locales like Evanston, Asheville, Providence, and states like California have already said we can't wait, and their leaders have answered to their call. There is no way forward from our current strife without addressing the institution of slavery and its legacy. So together in our relentless pursuit, we will continue to mobilize and strategize, and we will continue to urge congressional leaders like Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Leader Steny Hoyer, Majority Whip Jim Clyburn, and Chairman Jerry Nadler to pass HR 40 this session, because if not now, then when?
Ashe, Sister Dreisen, very well said, thank you. Next up is Dr. Greg Carr, Kamathi Carr, who's the chair of the African American Studies Department at Howard University. And it's always an exciting time to sit before this brother as he teaches. So we're gonna bring him in right now. Dr. Carr.
Hey, Brother Kamm, how are you, brother? It's good to hear your voice and see you, and good to be with everyone tonight. I'm very happy to be able to participate in this conversation, and not only to participate in the conversation, but to continue to learn and be inspired by long distance runners, my dear friend and brother, Ron Daniels, to hear Kenneth Henry's very meticulous work around fusing our ideological work and our long community-based struggle into policy recommendations, a struggle that actually get passed and move us forward. And Sister Heath, it's good to know that you're there at Human Rights Watch. I remember some of the folks early on when I first came to DC who were working with Human Rights Watch, and to hear now that this coalition politics is emerging is very important. And I'm looking forward to hearing from our sister Nkechi Taifa shortly. And thanks, Jam, and everybody at NBC I Trust for bringing us all together. And of course, Aiyetoro always brings the blade, and that's really where I want to co-sign her and reinforce that message. When we say reparations is on the ballot, it is indeed on the ballot. And the fight that is taking place now, this is the death knell, the rattling, the death rattle of white nationalism in this country. They've lost the demographic battle. This is a battle that they've been worried about, arguably since the beginning of this criminal enterprise called the United States of America, but certainly we can trace it in terms of public policy, federal policy, to the Chinese Exclusion Act in the 1880s, 1883, and then move it forward to the Immigration and Nationalization Act of 1965, and that really becomes the kind of prompt for the type of loosing of or ramping up of white nationalism that we see today. One of our dear brothers and ancestors, the man for whom who will be eternally mistaken for interchangeably with Ron Daniels, the great Ron Walters, in his book on white nationalism, talks about, you know, the situation we're in today. And that's where I want to spend the next couple of minutes kind of reinforcing message, because there's a lot of confusion going on now. And by well, there's not a lot of confusion, but there's enough confusion to perhaps play the role of spoiler. And that's what I really want to focus on very briefly. The white nationalist party, and I'm not talking about Republicans and Democrats, I'm talking about a kind of political operative kind of formation that exists outside of any one party. Because the white nationalist party, you could say, was the Democratic Party in the 19th century up through the mid 20th century, and now it's shifted to the Republican Party in this country. But the white nationalist party, which is now basically coterminous with the Republican Party, is trying to steal this final election in order to complete the work of a minority rule government, perhaps similar to South Africa or Rhodesia, formerly Zimbabwe, formerly Rhodesia. They have seized the judiciary as their last bastion stand. And if you look at the cases that were decided in the last several days in Pennsylvania, well, they weren't decided, but the cases that made their way to the Supreme Court in Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Wisconsin, as it relates to voting rights, what you saw is that the Supreme Court of this country has decided that their tactic for potentially stealing this election is to try to halt the counting of absentee ballots after November the 3rd. That's the case in Pennsylvania. In North Carolina, the attempt is to reduce the deadline for those ballots that are received postmarked before November 3rd, but reduce that deadline from its current position of 9 days and shave off as many of those days as possible. And in Wisconsin, of course, the idea was to hold the state of Wisconsin to a firm deadline. None of these cases have been decided. In fact, when you read Samuel Alito, a particularly exquisite racist, his opinion, or not opinion, his words in the statement that joined the North Carolina statement they put out, he's basically inviting, as they did in Pennsylvania, inviting the state legislatures, the Republican-controlled state legislatures in those states, to come back to the court with a request for the Supreme Court to intervene in state matters and stop this count. So clearly what we're faced with is a situation where they're going to try to see if it's close enough to steal, and if it's close enough to steal, and if the outcome may be determined by absentee ballots or vote by mail ballots, to stop that count. In other words, Bush v. Gore on steroids. In fact, Justice, I started calling him Justice, Brett Kavanaugh cited Bush v. Gore. Other than Clarence Thomas, I don't remember. Maybe a couple of the lawyers, maybe Adjoa or Nkechi can tell me if they've seen it before, but I've never seen it other than Clarence Thomas playing around with it, cited as precedent, before Brett Kavanaugh did a couple of days ago. Now, where am I going with that as I wind to a close for this second? Because I'm looking forward to this conversation we're going to have. Bit of conversation. Democrats like Chuck Schumer are institutionalists. They somehow think that the United States of America has institutions that are permanent. There are institutionalists in this country. There are white nationalists in this country. And then, you know, there are other elements like Pan-Africanists and Black nationalists. And I'm speaking now directly to those who are saying the parties are the same. It doesn't matter. We need to organize for power. This is a deeply flawed argument to make at a time when we must be serious. As Brother Ron said, Dr. Daniels, the Democratic Party is not our permanent home or our friend. It is a tool, a means to an end. Voting is a means to an end. We have to now overflow the ballot box with either voting early, or if you don't mail anything now, walk it to the drop-off places wherever you are, find out the rules to do it and do it, so that we can have the Democrats take control of the Senate, push through HR 40 in its present form. Hopefully in the discussion, we can talk about these folks who got these great ideas on how to amend HR 40, like Sandy Darity and them. That's another conversation. But get this bill passed, get this commission done, and then move forward, because after the election, then we loosed our next stage of the strategy. Our next stage, because the Democratic Party will probably fracture in the next several years. This election is, if this election is won overwhelmingly by the Democratic Party, you're going to see the interest in the party begin to then separate out based on what they want. At that point, we have to continue to weaponize our interests, realizing that our domestic political interests have always been linked internationally. Everybody on this call knows that, but somehow that's getting lost in this sense, somehow that, like Schumer and them, some of the folks in the nationalist community and the descendants of slaves, self-assigned descendants of slaves, or foundational Black Americans, some of the radical, are somehow thinking that this is a domestic issue only, reparations. It is linked to those larger conversations. And we've got to get past November the 3rd in order to engage in the next stage of the reparations struggle. Finally, this is a long distance struggle. Our open enemies are trying to maintain a white nationalist state as part of a global white supremacist construct that is also weaponized by the political economy, hypercapitalism. The reparations claims we have, when you look at the 5 areas of harm, are all anchored in demands that have to be met through policy, state, local, and federal policy, as we've heard Kenniss say, but also have to be attended as well by self-repair. So this is not the time now to argue. It's not the time for entertainers or anyone else to jump down 5 minutes before this thing goes to the mat to say, here, I have an idea. It's not time for policy analysts who've been sitting in the Ivy for 20 years to say, wait, I think there's an amendment that needs to be in. No, it is time now to move across the goal, break the political backs of our open enemies. And then after we have done that, we engage in the next stage, which involves all of those conversations. But make no mistake, the only way we get to those next conversations in this generation is to break their backs on November 3rd. I'll stop with that.
I say, Dr. Carr, man, that was a powerful presentation, powerful words. And I'm waiting for those to engage you in conversation also in the question and answer period. So definitely. Our final speaker, we're going to begin as we ended with co-founders of NCOBRA. We began with our co-founder, Adjoa Aiyetoro, Attorney Adjoa Aiyetoro, and we're going to end the panel discussion with our one of our co-founders, Attorney Nkechi Taifa. And Nkechi, if you can also tell everyone a little bit about yourself and how to get in touch with you before you begin.
Okay, well, thank you so very much, Kamm Howard. And you can get in touch with me at blackpowerbblacklawyer.com. But I am excited to present what I call a miniature version of Sister Adjoa Aiyetoro's brilliant presentation, some probably 20 years ago, equating the reparations movement to a train. And I'm going to fit it all into 7 minutes. I added some stuff, I subtracted some stuff, but I want to really show that the reparations is in fact on the ballot. Why? Because the reparations movement is like a train that left the station during the enslavement era, a train that picked up people demanding passage of legislation to codify General Sherman's field order number 15, where the phrase 40 acres and a mule came into being. And although now on the train for reparations, we got neither the 40 acres nor the mule. But in the 1890s and the 1900s, the train stopped at Nashville, Tennessee, adding new cars and picking up Sister Callie House and Reverend Isaiah Dickerson and the organization that they led, the National Ex-Slave Mutual Bounty Relief and Pension Association. But this organization was destabilized. The government even sent this strong Black woman, Callie House, unjustly to prison. The train speed slowed, but it was not derailed. It kept moving forward. It kept chugging along. The Honorable Marcus Garvey got on that train in the early 20s, galvanized thousands, but his UNIA was also destabilized when the US government framed him and likewise sent him to prison. The train slowed, but was not run off the track. And it continued moving on, chugging along. It was joined by Queen Mother Audley Moore, who had been a Garveyite, who carried the tradition on and made sure that later organizations such as the Nation of Islam, the Black Panther Party, the Republic of New Africa included the issue as part of their platforms, and they all jumped on the train. The Black Reparations Commission, led by Sister Dorothy Lewis, the African National Reparations Organization, the National Black United Front, the National Conference of Black Lawyers, and others joined. And other groups and any number of Black people began to get on the train at various stations, and their ticket was their determination to see reparations won and their willingness to not simply be passengers, but rather to become the workers and the fuel to forward the movement of the train. And then President Mario Boubacar Obadeli of the Republic of New Africa issued a call for the formation of a coalition of organizations to not be in separate cars on the train, but to come together in unison. And in NCOBRA, the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America was born, consolidating the cars on the train. And so under the leadership of NCOBRA, the train picked up more cars, and NCOBRA brought on board organizations and people from sororities and fraternities, from civil rights groups, Black lawyer organizations, Black professional organizations, religious groups, and more. The train moved forward. It leaped with the passage of the Japanese American Redress Bill in 1988. And people who had been on the train looked out the window and saw $20,000 checks being given to each Japanese American detention camp survivor. They saw money for a trust fund to be used to educate Americans about the suffering of the Japanese Americans. People looked out the train window and heard the US government officially apologize to the Japanese Americans for throwing them in internment camps. And we saw those who fought against and resisted going into those internment camps and were in prison, receiving a pardon from the United States government. And whoa, the train almost jumped off the track. Where was the apology for the Black people who had suffered over 400 years of enslavement and post-enslavement degradation? Where were the textbooks to tell the real history, the true history? Where was the pardon for the Black freedom fighters still languishing in prison for fighting against the COINTELPRO war that the US government waged against the Black movement? And NCOBRA looked around and did not see any of that and vowed that they would work to build it. And Congressman John Conyers was now on this train, and NCOBRA joined forces with him and worked with his staff to draft legislation for a bill named HR 40 in remembrance of that promised 40 acres and that mule from long ago. And then NCOBRA got state and local legislatures to get on the board and pass resolutions in support of Conyers' bill, and NCOBRA developed legislative and litigative and direct action and education and economic development strategies to fuel the train and increase the speed with which it was moving to its destination, reparations. So now with this increase in reparations activity, the train went from one that traveled the back rails to one that was in the main thoroughfare, and reparations initiatives were bumping. Books and articles filtered throughout the train. Research was revealed showing the linkage of insurance companies and corporations to the enslavement era. Universities and religious institutions were opening up their caskets and documenting their ties to enslavement. Slavery disclosure ordinances were passed by local governments. The train was moving faster now, y'all, faster. And at every stop, it began picking up more and more passengers. And let me tell you, there was a certain excitement, a buzz, just a sense of anticipation. The train was moving and everybody wanted to own it, wanted to claim that it was their fuel, their ticket, their effort that was responsible for the train's momentum. The crowds outside the train clamor for a look as the train is speeding down the track. The train is adding new cars. Ta-Nehisi Coates comes on board. The National African American Reparations Commission comes on board, linking the struggle in the Caribbean with the struggles with what's going on here in the States. Evanston, Illinois comes on board, being the first jurisdiction to use public dollars, to fuel reparations justice programs in the city. The ACLU, Human Rights Watch, Color Exchange, Ben and Jerry's Ice Cream, y'all, white people, allies, and many, many more came on board, along with 2020 candidates vying for the presidency. Reparations is on the ballot, y'all. But then trolls on the internet burgeoned and the hills and valleys reared their ugly heads. But we cannot allow anything to slow down this train and stop its forward movement. We must forever keep in the forefront our purpose, the reason why we're on the train in the first place. We must remember that the train is not just one person or one organization. The train is the concept of reparations, and we must not allow any tactics to destabilize the train or throw it off the tracks. So as I close, my brothers and sisters, think about this. When you're about to go on a trip or a vacation, do you visualize being there before you get there? You know, if you watch your visualization, you see that what you expected is often obtained, and the same is true for reparations. Let's hold onto that vision of obtaining reparations, Adjoa. Let's visualize your elders on that train, Dreisen, sitting around the table negotiating the terms of reparation. Picture a successful outcome in that negotiation, Kamm. What do you want for reparations? Stay with that picture, Dr. Carr, as the train traverses the land and picking up more and more passengers, workers, and fuel along the way. Claim the victory, Sister Kenniss. And then all the hills and the valleys will be just that, hills and valleys that will be overcome. Claim the victory, Dr. Daniels, and no power can stop us. Claim the victory, Jessica, and see it unfold. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Can you? I can see the vindication of our ancestors through receipt of reparations. Can you? I can see the school books depicting our history with respect and newfound accuracy. Can you? I can see poverty-stricken communities being infused with resources to provide adequate housing and other life-sustaining and enhancing facilities. I can see it. Do you? I have Imani faith. I claim it. Will you? Open your eyes, y'all. It's time to get off that train because we have reached our destination. Reparations are on the ballot. Victory is certain. Pass HR 40. Reparations now. Back to you, Kamm.
Reparations now, Sister Nkechi. You fired us up. We are fired up in the chat. We are fired up. Thank you, my sister. It is very important that our people know that history. And you gave it to us in such a brief time, but you gave it to us in a way that definitely we can remember it and we can take part in, you know, feeling what our ancestors gave to this movement and being a part of this movement. At this time, right before we go to questions and answers, I just want to just wrap up, just say a little bit that was shared today, that Sister Adjoa reminded us not to be fooled by all of this comment out about not voting, that somehow it's gonna empower us if we don't vote. Dr. Daniels reminded us that not only is reparations on the ballot, but white nationalism is also on the ballot. White supremacy is on the ballot. Sister Kenniss told us how we could help in moving the legislation forward. Go to NCOBRA Online, interact with our interactive map, download our primer so you can be able to better converse with what actually HR 40 is designed to do. Sister Dreisen says that HR 40 is the answer to the moment, and we can't wait. And she's definitely right. This is the answer to the moment of all the struggle that we've been putting in this country, especially in this particular period. HR 40 is the answer to this moment. Dr. Carr, wow, again, talked about white nationalism. And this is a time where he wanted us to understand that this is a time for us to be serious. We cannot allow a close election. He said we must overflow the ballot box. And Sister Nkechi told us that we cannot allow this movement to be destabilized. We cannot allow the train to be thrown off the track, and we must claim this victory. So I want to thank everybody who presented tonight on why we felt it necessary at this particular time to have this webinar, Reparations on the Ballot, in this town hall. Before we get into the questions and answers, which we led by our Sister Jam, we want to play a video a clip by one of our newest ancestors in the reparations struggle, Dr. Conrad Worrell. It was his last public interview on a show with Reverend Mark Masamela Thompson and Roland Martin. Together, they did an interview with Dr. Worrell, and we're going to play that clip now.
We are honored to have a conversation with someone who's been an elder, teacher, and guide for so many of us, Dr. Conrad Worrell. Just briefly, Dr. Worrell is a native of Pasadena, where his father was best friends with Jackie Robinson's older brother, Mac Robinson. Conrad eventually migrated to Chicago, where he was a football and basketball and track star in high school, a veteran of the Vietnam era as well. He went on to earn his master's and his PhD, and ultimately to be the director of the Center for Inner City Studies at Northeastern Illinois University. But he is most also a veteran, not only of the Civil Rights Movement and SNCC for a while. He was at the 72 Black Political Convention in Gary. He was chair of the National Black United Front for over 2 decades, one of the pioneers in the National Coalition for Blacks Reparations in America. He's been fighting for reparations. He organized the Millions for Reparations March after being one of the directors of the Millions Man March in Washington, D.C. So our brother has done a lot. And I should also mention, he was one of the architects of Harold Washington's victory as the first Black mayor of Chicago. Conrad, hey brother, you on with Roland and me, man.
I'm a revolutionary. I'm a Pan-African nationalist. And I haven't been aligned with any political party in terms of loyalty throughout my whole life. But this is what I have to say. The Reconstruction period that ushered in our right to vote, and where we are now in this critical moment with a maniac in the White House, I think all Black people should bury the hatchet. I know electoral politics has its limitations, but at this hour, Black people need to unite and help throw Trump out of the White House, bury our hatchets, try to unify around some specific Black agenda items in the back room.
You specifically say in the back room. Obviously, stuff plays out differently today on social media.
What I mean by that is we need to grasp something generally that we can agree upon. But more importantly, even if we don't agree, let's bury the hatchet and take Trump out. Take the man out. The man is no good for humanity. He's no good specifically for Black people. This man gets reelected, we're in deep trouble. So that's my message. My message is, can we once for all bury the hatchet, Black people? Can we say, hey, this is a critical hour with a man telling us to take a drug that will kill us? A man leading the charge against Obama not being a citizen of this country in the first place? A man who allies himself with the Confederate leftover vestiges of white supremacy? A man who obviously has no regard for the millions of people who are being affected by this virus. He's only concerned about his reelection. I mean, come on, Black people. Can we unite around getting Trump out? Can we bury the hatchet in unity for this particular moment in history? Frederick Douglass, who was a civil rights advocate, and Martin Delany, who was one of the early Pan-African nationalists during Reconstruction, they united 150 years ago. So this is a critical hour, and I'm only pleading to Black people to bury the hatchet and take Trump out.
So the election is not just about who wins the next 4 years, it's who controls the federal bench for the next 2 generations.
Absolutely, Roland. Look, there's a wing in America of white people that want to take us back, that we ought to go back to the Confederacy, and that white supremacy should prevail, and they should reemerge to be the power force in America. When they say they want to take America back, what they mean is a Confederacy tradition of white supremacy where we become their property again, and they impose non-humanity status of not having any rights that a white man will respect. And they will do that in part to their Supreme Court and other federal courts throughout the nation.
I just want to thank all the panelists who participated and shared with us tonight. We have a tool now that we can use going forward up until November 3rd and even afterwards as we continue to push forth having this legislation actually passed. There's still a lot of work to do, as Dr. Carr mentioned, and there's still a lot of work to do even after November 3rd. Sister Jan.
Okay, thank you. We got a lot of really great questions. I'm gonna start off. This one isn't directed to anyone specifically. This one came from Lalitha Thomas. What do we expect to receive with reparations? What are we asking for specifically?
Dr. Daniels, if you, I'm sorry, anybody can answer, but Dr. Daniels, if you can talk about NAARC's 10-point platform. Sister Adjoa, I think you were about this.
Now, if you want Dr. Daniels to go first, it's fine.
Yes, one of the reasons why we created the National African American Reparations Commission was to create a framework for the conversation. And the National African American Reparations Commission is a united front operation. It includes various organizations and various people who've been working on reparations for a long time. And in that regard, you know, we talk about the possibility of direct benefits because people tend to talk about a check. This is really not a conversation about a check. And in fact, as Dr. Ivor Carruthers often reminds us, there's no amount of money anyway that could ever pay or pay for the harm that's been done to our ancestors. But there are instances like in Tulsa, where we have one survivor, over 100 years old now, you know, who would be entitled to direct benefits. But I think in a larger sense, what we've been focusing on is community benefits. And UCAM and NCOBRA have helped to tease out and to flesh out those definitions in the sense that if you look at Tulsa, for example, if we in fact were able to take care of all the people who, if they had done the right thing, the damage is still larger than the sum of the parts of the individuals. A community was destroyed. So how do you rebuild community? So we talk about housing, we talk about economic development, we talk about healthcare, we talk about land, we talk about composite benefits that can help the entirety of the Black community. And let me emphasize, the entirety of the Black community without any testing or DNA kinds of strategies or whatever. So in general terms, that's what we're looking at. And again, for people who want to look at the NAARC 10-point program, which parallels the CARICOM 10-point program, you can go to the website ibw21.org and go to the Reparations Resource Center. And in fact, you'll find the most extensive online reparations resource center in the world on the IBW website.
Sister Adjoa.
Yeah, I in addition, would like to point out the fact that one of the things we did in NCOBRA a number of years ago in the Legal Strategies Commission was to develop 5 injury areas that we wanted to address as it related, we thought were the primary areas, not the only ones, to address in terms of repair. And those injury areas were education, criminal punishment, wealth and poverty, health, and what we call peoplehood nationhood, which was the taking of our identity. And that therefore reparations would go towards those kinds of things, not exclusively, but those are the 5 areas that we felt were the more significant. And we can look at it at today, the repair needed, look at the criminal punishment system and the police, and look at the education systems, and look at health and the disparities in our health, and on and on. Ron Walters, that people have raised up, who was really one of our first elders in Cobra. He was with us in the founding. He started the elders council, was one of the first, had the whole issue around wealth. He wrote volumes about the disparities in terms of wealth that we could trace back. So those are the areas as well. I think it folds right into the 10-point program, but I wanted to lift that up. The other thing is that and Howard University Law School, and I've sent Kamm some of the books. He helped me edit an article, but we have an issue that came out in the spring that just came out recently because they didn't have money. They sent it online, and I can send it to whoever wants it online, but also we have a few books. But we focused on in that, and my article focuses on the 4 way in which we can address those who are descendants of enslaved Africans, but at the same time addresses what Ron is saying and what Cobra has always said as well, is that we have to deal with the legacy of slavery. We don't just deal with addressing the injury because I can trace my bloodline back to enslaved Africans. Some of us can, some of us can't, but the injury, particularly in the legacy of slavery, when they asked Diallo, when they shot him 40-some times, and we said it's in our Legal Strategies Commission, remembering Nkechi, they didn't stop and say, well, are you a descendant of an enslaved African? No, they looked at him, and that's the legacy of slavery, the color of his skin. That's what got him killed like that. So that's what the biggest part of what we have to do with reparations is heal and repair the injuries that have been caused by white supremacy and the designation of Black skin as being somehow enough such that we can murder without any kind of reprisal, on and on. I don't want to go get on my bandstand or whatever you call that thing. But those are the things in which we have to address in terms of reparations. As Cobra has pointed out internationally, I'm sure NAARC, we talking about full repair. We have been injured by a system, not an individual person, by a system that has said that we are less than, that we can be brutalized without any reprisal in all layers. And so that's what reparations has to look like.
Hey.
Can I add one thing? People, Greg Carr made a point that I would really like to emphasize, because in the piece that we did about 6 weeks ago in terms of reparations on the ballot, we said to people, you need to vote, on and on, but we put in there, which we couldn't take out at the last minute when Kamm and I were trying to on the website, but we said, if you're using absentee ballot, I want to underscore that if you see this document, ignore that. Do not ask for an absentee ballot. It is too late. Do not mail your ballot in. It is too late. You take your ballot. If you want to take the ballot, you can take it to the official drop boxes. You can take it to, and go, be sure, because I sent a piece out maybe a month ago or 3 weeks ago that talked about that the Republicans were creating fake drop boxes. Right. So you take the ballot to the voting polls, to the Board of Election Commissions, and you put it there, or you vote in person. early voting is still going on in DC, Maryland, Virginia, all over the country now. DC and Maryland were the last ones to start early voting. But you either vote in person or you take your ballot and put it in a drop box. Do not put it in the mail. Thank you.
Sister Jam, next question.
Sure. So we have a number of questions that are very similar. So I'm going to try to sum them up. But there's a lot of concern about HR 40. One, why haven't Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senator Minority Leader Chuck Schumer co-sponsored? Why haven't they co-sponsored HR 40? And has the goalpost been moved? Has it been 150 co-sponsors goalpost moved to get HR 40 out of the committee? And lastly, how do we plan to get the additional votes that we need?
So I'll take a stab at that initially. So what we were told is that generally the speaker does not co-sponsor legislation. She's either for it or she's against it. Or he's either for it or against it. And at this particular time, Speaker Nancy Pelosi has gone on record in 2019, right around the Juneteenth hearing, that she was in support of HR 40, and if it came out of judiciary, there would be a vote. We had initially as a goalpost 150 co-sponsors, and we were set to meet that. We met that goal, and we were set to move the legislation to judiciary, and we were halted as a result of scheduling conflict. And then the election began to dominate everything on Capitol Hill. And so we knew that we need 218 votes, a simple majority to pass the legislation. So even though we met the 150, we still need 218 votes. And that's why it's still critical that we continue to work to get co-sponsors. So when we have enough votes to get it out of judiciary. That's no question. It's not gonna be raised in judiciary unless we can get what we're told, unless we can get a schedule for a House vote. And once it makes it out of judiciary, the more votes we have, more co-sponsors we have going to the floor, the less are needed once it gets to the floor. If we can go into a floor vote with 218 co-sponsors, that's really the ultimate goal, is that it'll be just a rubber stamp once it gets there. But certainly we have to continue to struggle to get as many co-sponsors as possible before this session ends. Anyone else can jump on that if they like.
I would just say that this probably was covered before, but this is the first time ever that we've had a Senate companion bill to HR 40. I mean, we have gone further in the past year than we've gone, forever. So the momentum is there. We need to keep the momentum up. This is not the time to rest on laurels or anything along those lines.
I might add something there as well. What you were saying, Nkechi. Of course, not being in on all of the strategy and the deliberations in terms of where we are at this moment, we can assume that the white nationalist leader of the Senate would stick this legislation where he has stuck the CARES Act and everything else, since they have no concern for any human life. The white nationalists who are going to go vote for them and anything else, but this is for people who will be going to the polls in Mississippi, where Mike Epps is running, who will be going to the polls in Louisiana, where the mayor of Baton Rouge could be in a runoff with the white nationalist who currently occupies that seat in the United States Senate. And for those who are in Georgia, with John Ossoff and Reverend Warner are down there, when the new Congress is put in, the issue of co-sponsors, and for those in California, when Senator Harris, with the Democrats prevail, leaves her seat and becomes the vice president, perhaps a Shirley Weber or a Barbara Lee would be appointed to that seat, to fill that seat in the United States Senate. But we need to be thinking strategically about what happens to make sure, because see, what happens in January, we want to be able to have a hell of a celebration because of the work of the next few days to at least get this runoff in Louisiana. Mississippi's 40% black. Come on now, with Jackson and Chokwe and them down there, and Rukia and Operation Jackson. That's the home, that's RNA, that's Nubia district. It's time to break Cindy Hyde's back, put Mike Espy in there, and you got another co-sponsor for HR 40 on the Senate side. But all that happens now, not in January. So I just wanted to add that.
Can I also chime in on that? Because I think that we're in a good place, but we can't relax.
Right.
I mean, reparations has moved because of our work from the fringes to the mainstream. So everybody's talking about reparations, but we have to make sure that we let the Democratic Party know and the leadership, we're not playing. We want this to be, there are many major priorities which will affect our people. The George Floyd Act, the John Lewis Voting Act, these are all good bills. So we're not talking negatively about that, but we want reparations, which again, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee has correctly described as the umbrella to be in the mix for that first 100-day package. That's the priority. Mm-hmm. And we've had to learn and see how this stuff gets navigated and so forth, and it's just not easy and whatnot. But frankly, based on what Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee has said and others, we're confident that we're going to get a markup and that we're going to get a vote on the floor. But we can't, it's just like this election. We can't say, well, we have to make that happen. We can't just assume it's going to happen. The other thing I want to do is real quickly, this is something I've been talking about, so just indulge me for one quick second on what you said, Dr. Carr, and you left out Jamie Harrison in South Carolina.
That's right, brother. That's right.
For years and years and years, I have been screaming in the wilderness. The biggest political party in America is not the Democrats, it's not the Republicans, it is non-voters. Right? And that's an exaggeration, but here's what I mean by that. In the United States of America, and Obama recently brought this out, if 55% of the total eligible electorate votes, that's considered like some big deal. This is like a sham. Anywhere else, 80%, 90% vote. Now I'm gonna give you a concrete example of what we're talking about. You're talking about Mississippi. I'm gonna use Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. This came out in the New York Times 2 days ago. Makes my point. In Michigan, and I'm not blaming our people, but in Michigan, Trump won by 10,704 votes. This article talked about non-voters, black and white. Guess how many there were? Black and white, 2,621,344. So if you just take 10% of that number, and we know it's more than that, 10% of that number say it's black, that's 260,000 votes that black people, and Trump won by 10,000. In Mississippi, there is no question, but if black people who are not registered, who are registered but who do not vote, voted for Mike Espy, we would bust out. Same thing. What would it be like to send Lindsey Graham home?
A shame.
And the votes are there to get it done. We hold a power.
Sister Jan.
Okay, thank you. Let me go to the next question. We have a lot coming in now. All right, so can you speak to the substance of HR 40 outside of the creation of the committee to research reparation, or why such a committee is substantive as the political starting point?
So the substance of HR 40, again, there are three particular periods that this legislation addresses: the period of enslavement, the period of Jim Crow apartheid, 1865 to 1965, and the post-Jim Crow period, 1965 to present. During these periods, a wide host of crimes against African humanity was perpetrated amongst our people. And what we are suffering from today is the legacy of those crimes. The initial HR 40 was to study and determine whether or not there was continued injury. This HR 40 begins with the fact that there's continued injury, and how does that injury play out in the lives of everyday Black Americans? And what would it take to address those injuries? And so written into HR 40 is the highest standard of reparations in the world. And that's the standard of full reparations. And as it was stated earlier, there are 5 components of full reparations: cessation and guarantees of non-repetition, stopping the bad acts that are, if they continue to happen; restitution, returning the people back to where we would have been had we not been injured; compensation for the damages that we can monetize; and satisfaction, return of the dignity to us as a people; and apologies and monuments and museums and things like that lead to satisfaction; and then rehabilitation for heart, mind, and spirit damage that we suffer. So written into the bill is a charge for the commission to craft reparation proposals in each of those areas of redress. And there may be 5 proposals in one, 6 or 7 in another, but out of this commission should come a comprehensive plan. And I think that the reason we started with this particular legislation is because this is what Congressman Conyers believed could pass at the time that he introduced the bill. The country was not ready for an actual reparations bill that said this is the amount of money that is due, this is what you pay, that this was a process that had worked for the Japanese Americans, and he felt that it would work for us. And it has shown itself to be correct, because if it was something different, it wouldn't have taken 30 years. It probably wouldn't be even talked about. So the fact that it took this long in this country shown that, this country was not ready during that particular time to really talk about redressing the crimes and injuries that it had committed against us. And so now we're at this critical time where we are ready, and we have to push the needle forward to actually having this commission started. And to do that, we have to ensure that we send the Republicans home.
Okay, anyone else wanted to answer that?
I want to add one little piece to it, if I could. And that's the fact, back in 1988, Congressman Conyers, after he had been lobbied and harassed by Reparations Ray to actually introduce the bill, we held a meeting at what's the center in Nkechi? Oh man, it's on 18th Street. I forget the name of it. Anyway, and we held this huge meeting where Congressman Conyers we brought the draft that he had for the bill, HR, that wasn't HR 40 the first year, but became HR 40. And he specifically, through the person that came on his behalf, his legislative aide, he presented to us the reasoning behind the bill as it was. And what he said specifically was sort of like what Kamm said, but I remember the words. I remember him saying, and Congressman Conyers saying, and then the aide saying, this bill is just like the Japanese American redress bill. You remember that, Nkechi? Just like it. If they will pass this bill for the Japanese Americans, they will pass it for us. So his strategy was to model that bill right after just after the bill that had just been passed. That was his strategy. Some people in that room, many people in that room, did not agree with it. It was a very, very rambunctious. How do I get myself on the screen like you, Nkechi?
Am I big?
You're talking. We see you big.
Oh, you do? I can't see me big. I want to see me big like Nkechi.
I'm in a little box.
Okay, so I'm in a little box too. We competing. But anyway, the point being that there was this rambunctious I mean, it was a big thing. And I'm telling people this history because I want people to know that from the very beginning, there were many people who were very much opposed to that bill. They wanted the bill that eventually NAARC, with, you know, through NAARC and in Cobra, we got revised in what, 2017? That's the bill that they wanted. But it was strategic on the part of Congressman Conyers. And I think he was correct. He was correct because we had to go kind of slow and, you know, because as somebody said, I think Kamm said, we wouldn't be that far if we had started with the bill we have now. It would be gone probably. We wouldn't be where we are. But I just wanted to give that little bit of history.
And Adjoa, I'm really glad you did. And I want to accentuate that because this is part of history that's not really written down. I've really got to give it to New African Independence Movement in Republic of New Africa, because there was specific independence politics that was very contrary to the way in which the bill was. And New African Independence Movement specifically and strategically subjugated their politics, okay, for the greater good. And that is a history that it's not really out there. And
say it again, Nkechi, please. This is important for young people to hear.
Yeah, because there were people who actually left the room.
Oh no, there were almost fights. We had to get security. I mean, it was major. We had to get security. I was chairing that meeting. You remember this, Nkechi, and we had to get security to move some people who were just so adamantly, forcefully against it. And Nkechi, I understand what you're saying, but I think that was the beauty of Cobra.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The greater good.
Having it as a coalition of more than just the RNA, of more than just the African independence movement, that we came together in that coalition as in Cobra, and were able to say any individual organization's perspective or independence movement's perspective is subjugated, as you use that term, to the greater good of Cobra's goal of getting reparations.
Yeah, that we should have a whole session on that because there's even more to that we don't even need to get into right now. But it's important to know that this history. That's
right.
Thank you for that, both of you.
Can I get just a little quick piece of that too? Just a little quick piece. Because I also think, and this is why I'm just vibing with Dr. Carr as well, because he's in a position as a professor at a university. And, you know, we have young brothers and sisters, and even older ones, frankly, who are great theoreticians. You know, there's nothing wrong with their ideological positions. I think Karenga once said, I am realistic, but as for reality, I have come to change it. That's an incredible capsulization. I'm realistic, he says, but for reality, I have come to change it. So if you look back at HR 40, it became an excellent organizing tool.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
look at the polling. Look at the polling on HR 40. We were fighting just to convince Black people
exactly
that it was a good idea, let alone white folks.
Exactly.
Our polling has shown gradually through our work and through our education and all the different tributaries that will have contributed to us. We're now up to 70 or 75% of Black people who now believe.
Exactly.
And now the most recent polling saying about 55, 60% of white people are moving that direction.
Exactly.
So that was a conscious decision that was said. We went to Congressman Conyers. And the bill is so strong because, well, it was rewritten. And it was rewritten with people who knew what to do. And I'm gonna say this straight up. Cobra and the perspective that Cobra brought helped to make it the bill that it is today, period.
Mm-hmm.
So Brother Jamoke wants to know what needs to happen to bring HR 40 out of committee.
Dr. Daniels, we want to take that.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now, what Congresswoman Sheila Jackson-Lee is saying in the post-election section, she believes that she has a commitment and has had a commitment from Chairman Nadler to bring it out of, not only to bring it out of the Judiciary Committee, but feels confident based on her conversation with the leadership that there will be a markup and the bill will be taken to the floor. So that's what she believes. That's what she's saying to us. Others are saying the same thing. So our goal is to back her and to keep the pressure on, you know, inside, outside, because there are times when, you know, we may have to do some things and put a little pressure on, and she can have what's called plausible deniability, but we're gonna keep that pressure on to make sure that they honor their word. So I feel very confident that we're in a very good place, that this is not something, this is no time to retreat, and that they will not retreat. But having said that, you know, and Dreisen, you know, has really done an incredible job of putting together a listserv, putting together these organizations. So we are poised as never before to like exert pressure. Color of Change, all these organizations are poised in a great coalition to put the pressure on. So we're in a great position.
Thank you. So we have two questions. One of them is, well, one is more of a statement directed to Dr. Adjoa. Brother Shabazz says, Elder Adjoa says staying home benefits the old guard. Biden has been in politics nearly 50 years. He is the old guard. Biden has never been held accountable for the DLC's cynical push to criminalize Black men in the pursuit of white votes. We're basically rewarding Biden for the denigration without even a promise to push for reparations.
Well, I want to respond to that by saying this is not about Biden. I think we have heard other comments. I think Dr. Carr particularly talked about it from this perspective. We're not saying we love Biden. You know, I know Biden. I mean, I don't know him personally. I don't want anybody to, I'm trying to act like I know him personally, but I know him. I knew him when he was a senator. I knew how he didn't stand up for things that affected directly Black people, you know? But that's strategically, this is a strategic decision that we have to make. If we want to get reparations passed out of Congress and on a president's desk will sign, because one thing about Biden, and I don't know him personally, but I have seen him over his career, he will sign that bill. If that bill gets to him from his party in the House and the Senate, he will sign it. So it's not about him. It's not rewarding him. Well, first of all, if we don't reward, you know, let's take the word reward. Maybe him becoming president, that man's tried to be president how many times? Maybe him becoming president is a reward to him. But what's the alternative? To allow affirmed action and deed and word white supremacist who sits in the White House and uses all of his power to create violence against people of color and Black. I mean, the people on the borders that he's not letting in, and he's separating families. You know, the fact that he will not oppose and condemn white supremacist violence against Black people. The fact that he upholds white supremacist principles. He's far worse than Biden, from what I know of Biden. And Biden is not our friend, if you want to put it in terms of his history. But he is not our enemy. President Trump is our enemy. President Trump has an agenda. An agenda. If anybody looked at what that man has done even before he became president, if we look at his agenda, his father was a member of the neo-Nazi party. He tried to lie and say he wasn't when we said it 3 or 4 years ago. And whoever said it, he forgets that when he lies, people have documentation. They had a newspaper article from New York identifying his father as being one of those who participated in a neo-Nazi attack. So we can be, you know, I think And Greg said it better than I'm gonna say it, but we have to be strategic. If we are concerned about the lives of not just Black people, because I'm not just concerned about just Black people. I'm concerned about all oppressed people. I'm concerned about the indigenous people in this country. I'm concerned about the Latino and Latinx. I'm concerned about the poor. I'm concerned about all of us who don't need a president that has already demonstrated for 4 years that he will kill you. What did he do with the coronavirus? How many of those deaths have blood on his hands? That's not racial in that specific piece, but it is racial, because who's the highest percentage of deaths? Us. Who's the highest percentage of deaths? Us. And he doesn't care. He knew in January how deadly this was, and he lied to the people. He dismantled Obama's health response system. He has not dealt with this. So I am impatient, and I'll just be quite frank on this call. I am impatient with Black folk who want to lift up the errors of Biden and say, why should we support him? We are supporting him. We are supporting us by getting Trump out of office, getting him out of office. We're supporting us by going to the polls and voting Democrat. And I don't know, we ain't 501c3, so we can say it. We are supporting us by getting the majority, retaining the Democratic majority in the House and gaining the majority in the Senate. We're supporting us. With that kind of move, Biden has to move on our behalf. He has no choice. Particularly if we don't do what historically people have done, which is once elected, and Obama said don't do it, and we still did it. Once the election is over, we lay back, oh, I'm done, right? We have to keep the pressure mounted. NAARC, NCOBRA, NAACP, Human Rights Watch, all of these groups, and I'm not naming everybody because I can't remember everybody, plus I need to shut up, but all of these groups, we have to keep the pressure up. January 20th or whenever they have the inauguration, we don't go home and rest. We stay on top of it. We keep pushing. We say, we got you here. And if you don't do what you said you're gonna do, then we're gonna get you gone. And we have to mean it. So it's to me, and I don't mean any disrespect, whoever asked the question, please do not hear me being disrespectful to you. But I will just say it as candidly, and folk on this panel know me by now. It's foolishness to not vote for the Democrats in this election if we want reparations. As I said in my first talk, I read from the little piece you all have. There is no guarantee. It is only possibility and probability. Nobody on this panel is saying we are guaranteed to get reparations passed. We're guaranteed. But this is the best shot we have had since it was first introduced. I know it's been revised, but it first introduced in 1989. This is the best shot we have. And I think we have to take advantage of this best shot. We have to swallow our pride, swallow our dislike for Biden and anybody else, and vote Democratic, get them in office and hold their feet to the fire. Thank you.
I do think quickly, I can't follow that call to action, but I want to say quickly to note, and important to note, that Biden's plan for Black America does include supporting a study for the impacts of slavery, and that is HR 40. So Biden will sign this bill.
That's absolutely right. Thank you.
Definitely sign it.
That. Yeah, and in fact, just very quickly, because there is a real fight in some corners of our community around this issue, and that question of Biden and is a legitimate critique. You know, I mean, ask Anita Hill, who has come out to support Biden, but she certainly isn't supporting him because of what he did to her in 1989 with that fool Clarence Thomas, who swore in his former clerk the other night at the White House, the handmaiden, But what we're this legitimate difference. That's why I'm glad that Adjoa and Nkechi, y'all brought up that very serious difference of opinion that was resolved by operational unity, as that name's talking about, Maulana Karenga. Of course, unity without uniformity, we've got a common purpose. And I just want to say this very quickly. Of the 5 injury areas, whether it be education, and I'm very glad, Dreisen, that you read from that Lift Every Voice plan, because anybody making $150,000 or less goes to public university free. I mean, there are pieces seeded into healthcare. The CARES Act gets passed. Criminal punishment, we've got issues that have to be addressed, and I'll leave that to the experts on this call. Wealth and poverty. Somebody asked about the poverty gap in the chat, but the first one, peoplehood. I think that's where we have to be clear about the fact that we are all in agreement on the nature of African life, the preservation of African life, and the repair of African life, much of which relies on us doing this for ourselves. But here's where the challenge comes in, and I'm glad you said that, Adjoa. I think one of the challenges anyway, as we think about it, Catherine Frankie, who a lot of us know, and Nkechi knows it well. In fact, Nkechi gave a much longer, really powerful discussion that she's packed into 5 minutes at Howard Law School. Dr. Frankie, Professor Frankie was there. Catherine Frankie, in her book Repair, talks about the possibility of a wealth tax on white people who have a certain amount of wealth in this country, and intergenerational transfer of wealth. She's doing that in part because she understands something that we have to understand. This country is not going to be here much longer in its current configuration. Within the next several decades, 70% of the people who live in this country are going to live in 15 states. That means the Electoral College is going to either have to go, or there's going to be a war in this country. Because you can't have a United States Senate where 30% of the people control 70% of the people based on the fact that they living in a place where it's 3 cows and 2 of them. That's just not going to be sustained. So I'm saying that to say this little window we have right now, 2020 to 2024, is probably the window that's going to determine what this thing is going to look like going forward. Joe Biden may not make it to 2024, which means Kamala Harris becomes the president. Even if he makes it to 2024, and this is all stuff we could talk about offline, I mean, Kamala Harris hasn't proven she can win a national campaign. Expect a challenge, a primary challenge to her in 2024. It might be Governor Stacey Abrams, because if she goes back and runs in Georgia in 2 years, with the way this thing is trending demographically, she's going to beat Brian Kemp like a drum. And she may come back in 2024 and say, okay, Kamala, this was cool, but you have never proven that you can get the elect, because there's class issues involved in Black community. You know, that maybe she might not be. So I'm saying I have to say that this is the window, as Adjoa is saying, and I'll end with this. The ADOS challenge, the Descendants of Slavery. I want to raise that because there is an emotional component to this demand that we have to address as part of our self-repair, and it's a legitimate critique come from ADOS and FBA and also about we were harmed. Yes, we were harmed in this land, but understand that it rests on a deeply flawed assumption that this is a nation. It is not a nation. That's why Catherine Frankie is saying if you want it to be a nation, there's going to have to be truth and reconciliation. There's going to have to be, and all of that, I am one that believes it's impossible because that will require an abandonment of whiteness. But the ADOS claim is ironically rooted in a concept of America that has never existed. You think these people believe in America. They do not. So taking a DNA test or proving your citizenship means absolutely nothing to people for whom whiteness, which is a transnational concept, only applies in contexts where they can use it to their advantage. The ADOS claim is based, ironically, on the same assumptions that the Proud Boys, that the Boogaloo Boys that are making, which is, this is a country. It is not a country. It is a perpetual field of negotiation, and we've got a 4-year window to determine whether we can get our interests finally advanced by tools, and the tools are politicians. Black people looking at politicians like celebrities. No, Joe Biden, Joe Budden, Joe Boo Boo, it doesn't matter what your name is. Treat every politician like a tool. That's the tactic. I'll stop with that.
Can I add one thing? I know this is great, raised something that I have been meaning to say. part of in the article I wrote that is in the journal talks about how we should not allow our differences to divide us on this issue of reparations. If we look at, and somebody asked a question that I think was answered very well, but I want to add this piece about what does HR 40 call for? The arguments we have among us, if we want to put it that way, about whether it should be reparations just for descendants of enslaved Africans, whether it should be reparations for all of the different groups. All of that, the part of the bill that I really like is it will be a commission formed if that bill is passed. Anyone can submit proposals to that commission. We destroy the possibility of getting HR 40 passed by getting into arguments that aren't arguments that need to be made now anyway. Right. If in fact ADOS, any other group, you know, who shot down, you know, the Christian church down the street, whatever, wants to get an idea before the commission, they have a right to do so. And so part of it, I think, strategy-wise, in terms of HR 40, is again my point about Biden. Let us not shoot ourselves in the foot. And, you know, people good for doing that. We know that. Let us not shoot ourselves in the foot, arguing about things that can't be decided by us anyway and need to be finally decided and reviewed by a commission, the part of it, and we don't need to go into the structure of it. Our organizations have a number of commissioners they can appoint. We can have experts present. We can have lay people present. But what people are doing many times in this debate about HR 40 is actually, even though they're saying they want reparations, they don't want reparations. They don't want reparations. Because if they wanted reparations, they'd be getting behind the push that NAARC and Cobra and others of just getting the bill passed. You know, and
the problem is when there are ulterior motives underpinning.
Well, yeah, and that might be, but it's the same point I made when we found it in Cobra. Everybody in that room, we found it in Cobra, didn't really believe we could get reparations. They were just there, right? And I believe that everybody who's talking about reparations now may not really be sincere or serious or whatever, but I'm not even gonna get into their motives. I'm saying strategically, if you want to get reparations, we must get HR 40 passed. We can argue and so get the experts information and let them deal with it, what they want. I can't get into people's motives. I just know that everybody is not thinking strategically and everybody doesn't believe. And Nkechi, you made the point beautifully about how we have to hold the completion. We have to believe in the victory. We have to see it, but everybody can't do that. Whether they want to do it or not, they can't do it. But I'm saying we have to tell our people, and not just white people, Black people, I'm talking everybody. Let's hold on to the victory of getting it passed.
Ashe. Sister Jam, we're moving on to the second hour. I'm not sure, it seems like no one has really left. We still have all of our participants, so they're really getting, staying with us and getting a lot out of it as I am. Did you have a final question? If we want the panelists to have a final statement, how did you want to do it?
Well, given the reason why we're here today, what is it that you want people to know most about the movement for reparations and how we move forward? Riffing off of what Dr. Adjoa Aiyetoro just talked about, the need to continue to move forward united. What is it that you think we need to do? What is the most vital next step for all of us?
We can just go down the line, and everyone and just take about a minute, minute and a half and answer that question. And start in the order that we presented. Sister Adjoa.
Well, I think I said it, and thank you for asking that question again. I think the most important thing for us to do now is to go to the polls, if we haven't voted already, to go to the polls and vote, or take your ballot and put it in the box in the voting place and vote, so we can get a Democratic Congress and a Democratic president, for the goal of getting HR 40 passed. That is for the reparations. Me as a reparationist, that's one of the primary issues that I am focused on. And we have a window of opportunity to do it, and that's what I would say.
Dr. Daniels.
Well, first of all, let me just say again, express profound appreciation for this opportunity that's been presented by NCOBRA and I'm blanking on the other organization, the
National Black Cultural Information Trust.
I just want to give props there, because this has been a very rich conversation, and one that we really need to continue, because it's been very instructive. And so I want to pick up on a point, that 2 points, one that Adjoa made and the other Dr. Carr made. First, with the point that Adjoa made. She said, this is for our people. Now, I happen to believe that Biden is clearly the better choice, and I can make the case like a lawyer, straight up and down. You know, I'll just take one issue that was raised: healthcare. Healthcare. Our people, Black people, need healthcare, right? So I would prefer the Bernie Sanders proposition of Medicare for all. Obama put forth Obamacare without a public option. We wish he had at least done that. Biden at least wants to move that far. Trump has no option. Think, people, no option. What does that mean? Not in terms of my theory, but what does that mean into the common lives of the people? Our people will benefit in terms of how we vote. The second thing I want to mention is the margins. And I really feel good about what's happening, because I have said from the beginning, this is like the civil rights movement all over. It's like Rose Sanders and the SNCC freedom singer saying, we ain't gonna let nobody turn us around. You can put the ballot box 15 miles. We're coming, because we are not going to let white supremacy triumph in the name of our ancestors. That's a part of the healing too, right? It's not just voting for the sake of voting. It is that bridge. It is that bloody Sunday. It is all of the terror inflicted on our people coming out of the post-Reconstruction in terms of trying to turn us back. We're not letting anybody turn us around. And so it's with that spirit that we need to be moving forward. And in this window right now, in the name of our ancestors, we have the greatest opportunity ever to get HR 40 passed. And I end on this note. It ain't over. I said that from the very beginning. And Dr. Carr has been alluding to it as well. Because at the end of the day, when we're talking about reparations, we are talking about refashioning the very nature of what the society looks about, because that's who we are. We're not just looking for a check. We're just not looking for, we are talking about healing ourselves, but we're also about repairing and shaping the whole nature of what this nation might be, or it will not be.
Sure, Dr. Daniels. Sister Kenniss.
Thank you so much. I have to tell you, by now I'm normally sound asleep, so I am totally wired and all the way live. One of the very basic things that has to happen, we have to stop the talk and not walk the walk. It is very, very frustrating when you put the call out and you ask for folk to make calls to their elected officials and they don't. It is very, very frustrating when you put the call out and you ask people to send emails to their elected officials and they don't. It is extremely frustrating to be out there pushing to get co-sponsorship, and you hear that folk are saying, well, you're not doing enough. I don't want you to say we can't get reparations. I challenge you to at every step of this process, lean in. If we say we need you to call your elected officials on the House side, then that's what we need. If we say we need you to go to your local senator's office in wherever it is, that's what we need. If we get the bill through both the House and the Senate, and we send it to the White House, and I'm going to be honest, Joe Biden isn't my favorite person, but I stood in line today. It was cold, it was raining, and I said, this will have to do. I went in, I voted for him, and I got my sticker. So if he's in the White House, then when we put the call out that the bill has gone over to the White House and we need you to jam his voicemail, we need you to jam his email, then that's what we need. Because what we know is that a lot of our elected officials, they move based upon numbers. So if I'm the only person asking anyone to come on board as a co-sponsor, then I'm just that zit that won't go away. But if hundreds and thousands of you are doing the same thing, then they sit up and they take notice. We know this. We've heard it. Brother Kamm and I have been on Capitol Hill, and they tell us, or they say, well, you know, has Congressman so-and-so come on as a co-sponsor? But when that person comes on, we'll come on as co-sponsors. So we can get there. We can get there, we can rise up, and we can send a very strong message. Because to be honest, and this is personal opinion, I don't think the issue has anything to do with reparations. This is a hierarchical society, and we have to topple this hierarchical society. We have to make it a flattened society, and we can do this. We can do it by getting HR 40 passed, whatever the companion bill on the Senate side is, and we can do it by forcing Joe Biden to come on board and sign the bill into law. And I just sent a donation to Jamie Harris in South Carolina, because not only do I want to get rid of Donald Trump, I need to know that Lindsey Graham is gone. Thank you so much.
Jay, Sister Dreisen.
I'm gonna be very brief. You know, Black people are worthy at the end of the day, and we continue to be in the crosshairs of white supremacy, and we need mass mobilization to get out. And one vehicle is HR 40. It's possible. When you look back to what our precedent is to be here today with this type of bill and the Civil Liberties American Act, they said it was impossible then. And impossible was nothing for those victims and survivors and their families and descendants of their families who talk about today the meaning and the importance of how reparations have shaped their life moving forward. When you break your leg and you have a massive injury like that, you need repair, or else you'll have complications in the rest of your body, and it will continue to nag and be continually worse, and over pain and suffering. That is what our people are going through. And we have to put a stop to the pain, to the suffering. And HR 40 is the vehicle for that. If we don't have repair and rehabilitation, there is no tomorrow. There is no next generations that can survive the conditions within the US currently. So we have to set a precedent moving forward. And we cannot allow these locales and states to substitute what the federal government needs to do. And so that's extremely important as we move forward, and California government showing up the federal government. It's it means that it's possible. You talk about California, a state that is the 5th largest economy in the world, okay? The United States can do it. We can move right now. We have the votes today. So let's move. And we've given you tools today to support the movement, to be active participants. And when you vote, you're an active voter. That is not a passive action. That is an active solution and pathway to something better, to an equitable future. So let's mobilize and get that done.
I'll say, Dr. Carr.
Thank you, Brother Kamm, and thank you, Jam, and the Trust for putting this together. Good to see our ancestor, Conrad Worrell, and you rode with him to the end, Kamm, so much respect to you, brother. Mama Shariki and everybody who helped us put this together. And just to echo everything everyone said, you know, Conrad, like Ron Daniels, he's a long distance runner. By while everybody's standing in these long lines, pick up the memoirs by Ron Daniels and Nkechi Taifa. You can stand there and read them while you're in line. That's a good thing to do. You need to understand some of this. So I want to end with this. While we've been on this call, I looked at my phone. The 8th Circuit Court of Appeals, which is what Minnesota is in the 8th Circuit, Federal Circuit, and they pack these damn courts, right? They ruled a 2-1, not the full bench, but a 2-1 panel of judges ruled that Minnesota must segregate, in other words, set aside any ballot they receive after 8 p.m. on November the 3rd, because they extended the deadline without the express will of the legislature. Now, Adjoa and Nkechi both know what this means. What these devils at the Supreme Court are doing, if you read the opinions from the past couple of days, they are interpreting legislature as meaning the elected body in a state and not the state Supreme Courts. So they're going to try to interfere with the election in Minnesota. You notice Trump has been there a couple of times in the last week. They want it close enough to steal. And then if you mailed your ballot, which is why Adjoa said, you got to hear it again, walk your ballot in. These devils have said, set them aside, because we're going to entertain, that's what they're saying. We're going to entertain every lawsuit that comes later in the month. And now that we got our handmaiden in here, we're going to run a 6-3 Boston on all of these votes. So finally, if you're in South Carolina, go in there and put Jamie Harrison in. If you're in Mississippi, get Mike Epstein in. We'll work with him. Louisiana, get this mayor of Baton Rouge into a runoff with this devil and put the cover on him after that. Georgia, there are 2 possible Senate seats. And there's a black woman running in Tennessee. I know Nashville, Memphis, Chattanooga. Go ahead and go out. Alabama, maybe Doug Jones wins, maybe he doesn't, to this football coach they got running. And if you're a black man, you should never play for Auburn again. Crack Tommy Tuberville's spine, his political spine. If you're in Colorado, Arizona, Montana, Michigan, or Texas, go and vote and get some senators in there, because now it's time to run a Boston on these devils, because this is the last time that we're going to be able to do this. If they get their way, this thing is about to fracture. It's going to be another kind of conversation. And all these people talking about voting don't count, you better be strapped, because you're not built like what's coming next. I'll stop.
Say, Sister Nkechi.
Wow, I am totally and completely full. I mean, I am full. The only thing I would say is that we need to call upon the spirits of our ancestors who walked with us, our ancestors that we call out, whether we're talking about Belinda Boyer or Callie House or Isaiah Dickinson, whether we're talking about Queen Mother Audley Moore, whether we're talking about James Foreman, whether we're talking about Brother Imari Abubakar Obadeli, Chokwe Lumumba, Reparations, Ray Jenkins, whether we're talking about Queen Mother Dorothy Lewis, and Jerry Al-Ghani, Brother Kwame Afo, Brother Kalanji Olusegun, Brother Hannibal Afrique. We're talking about people that we walk with, people who were founders and movers and shakers with in Cobra, whether we're talking about Comrade Worrell, whether we're talking about John Conyers himself, whether we're talking about all of those who lost their lives on the Middle Passage, whether we're talking about all of those who perished during the Tulsa race massacre, the Rosewood massacre, the Wilmington, North Carolina massacre, the Elaine, Arkansas, all of the names, all of the ones that we don't even know about. We need to call upon all of those spirits, George Floyd, and Breonna Taylor, and all of those who are victims of police terrorism. We need to call upon all of those spirits to be with us here this day and in this time. HR 40 is just the first step, but it's the first step that is the first step for all of the rest that is to come. We need to bring all of that together. We need to go out there and vote. We need to vote because our very survival, the very survival of our people actually begins with it right now, within a couple of days. I'm just gonna turn it back over to Kamm and just thank everybody for everything. Everyone who stayed, over 90 people still listening to this broadcast, and who knows how many more on Facebook, National Black Cultural Information Trust, National African American Reparations Commission, NAARC, the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America. Reparations Now. Turning it back over there to Kamm. Let's just take a deep breath. I'm sorry.
Yes, yes. Ashe. Oh, yes, Sister Nkechi. And we also just want to also raise up the name of Nana Pat Newton.
Oh my goodness gracious! Thank you.
Oh,
so recent, the most recent ancestor to be lifted up. Thank you very much, Nana Pat Newton.
Ashe. And I really echo everything that's been said. This was a powerful presentation to our people about the importance of this time, the very seriousness of this time. We will not get a time like this back, so we have to, as our brothers and sisters in the 60s says, we have to seize the time. I just want to say, as far as the movement, the reparations movement, in warfare, there's priorities in warfare. You don't, do certain things out of time and out of step if you want to win. And there's priorities in this reparations war. There's priorities in the movement, and the number one priority is to win. It's to win reparations, and all of our actions should be targeted toward actually winning the redress necessary for our people. And right now, the most opportune time and the most opportune structure and method is through HR 40, through this legislation. And people want to raise other priorities above that priority of winning. And after the number one priority of winning, then we can talk about what forms reparations take. But first we got to win. First we got to move this legislation to the point where it's passed, and that's where the forms come into place. But all of our efforts should be about winning, priority number one. Priority number two is the forms that it should take. Then priority number three, as we're seeing in Evanston, as we're seeing in Chicago, and what they'll see in Asheville, is how do we then deliver repair? Because that's gonna be another huge fight, but it doesn't move before the first priority, which is winning. And then maybe fourth down the line, Dr. Daniels, is who should get it and how it's distributed and all that. But the number one priority for this movement right now is to win reparations, and we're poised to move that needle forward. We're at a time like it's never been before in the history of this legislation, and not since the Reconstruction. The period of Reconstruction has both houses of Congress been put in a position by us to deal with the issue of redress for the crimes they committed against our people. We have moved this conversation to this point. No one else. We have moved it here. Collectively, our people have moved it here. We've gotten allies now. And if we want to take it to the next level, then we have to make sure that the people who can act in our favor are in position to act in our favor. And that is up to us. And we have to do that through the polls on November 3rd. And so the movement is really hinged around what we do in these next couple of weeks. Sister Jan.
I just want to say thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight, especially all of our powerful, powerful panelists. We're talking about years and years and years of expertise and experience and activism. And I just deeply appreciate all of you being here tonight. This is really an important conversation being had. History is being made right now. And we're on the forefront of a new generation moving forward. And a lot of this information is being discussed, but often is being discussed in ways that don't provide all the accurate information. So it's important to have you all here tonight and in forthcoming conversations. So I really appreciate that. For anyone that wants more information about the National Black Cultural Information Trust, you can visit us at nbcit.org. And thank you so much to N'Cobra for being a co-host and providing all of this expertise and providing all of this knowledge tonight.
Thank you, Sister Jam. Thank you for creating this new institution that is so much needed in our community. It's part of the healing. It's part of the internal repair that we have to do. And thank you for that, Sister.
Well, thank you so much. If anyone else doesn't have any remarks to make, we'll close it out. If anyone has any follow-up questions, I know we didn't get to all of them. I'm sorry, it was a whole lot. But if you have any follow-up questions, email us at info@nbcit.org and we'll try to direct you to the accurate information. Thank you, everyone, and have a blessed night.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Reparations now.
Thank you.